Morning, students. Today we will be completing our chapter and we will be studying about the last part of this chapter number 2, which is biological classification. In this chapter, we also have a topic of introduction of kingdom Plantae and Animalia, which we also have in chapter number 3 and 4. So we will covering this topic in detail in chapter 3 and 4. As we all know that kingdom Plantae includes all the eukaryotic organisms which have chlorophyll, so they are called as plants. And in kingdom Animalia, all the organisms which undergo the heterotrophic mode of nutrition and are eukaryotics and also multicellular, so those organisms are kept in kingdom Animalia. So we will be covering these two kingdoms separately in the upcoming chapters. So the last part of the chapter is about virus and viroids. Now, since we have learned about the 5 kingdom classification given by Whittaker, but in that classification there was no mentioning of these virus and some of the other organisms which we'll study in this part of the lecture video, like viruses, viroids, prions and lichens. So these are not discussed in that, but today we'll study about these things. So this virus word is used very often because every time like people fall ill and doctor usually say that you have just got viral infection. So this is a very common thing. So if it is a very common microbe, so why don't we study about this? So this organism called as virus is a unique organism. That means it has a characteristics of living and non-living at the same time. So this organism was not included in the 5 kingdom classification because this did not find any place in the classification as it is not considered truly living. That means the virus are non-cellular organisms which are only having a inert crystalline structure outside the living cell. So therefore, there was a doubt whether the viruses are living or non-living, but it was concluded that the virus are non-living organisms, and that's why they were not classified in any of the 5 kingdom classification because they were not living. But when it is non-living, then how does it affects our body? It causes so many infections also, as the other microbes causes bacterial infection or fungal infection because they are living. So if a virus can also create a viral infection, then it might be living. So let's study about the virus, how it allows itself to infect us. So this virus is only living when it enters the host body. Okay, so if a virus is non-living, so it is considered as non-living because it does not have no component of cells. It does not have the components of cell. That means cell is a basic fundamental unit of our life. So because it's a building block of a cell, but viruses do not have any cell. So when they don't have any building block, so how will they be considered as a living organisms? So the basics of a living organism is cell, but these organisms do not have any cell. So that's why it's not considered as living, because it lacks the cell. So that's why it's not living. And it does not have no cell membrane. So the components which are very essential membrane, so it does not have any cell membrane. It does not respond to anything. It's like dust at dust when it's outside the host body. Okay, so that's why they are non-living. They don't have any metabolism. Because when they don't even have a cell, how will they metabolize the things? So no metabolism, nothing. So they do not undergo any process of chemical reactions, no digestion, nothing. So that's why they are non-living. Okay, so these all things made it non-living, as they don't have any specific basic features of a living organism. That's why they are considered as non-living. Also, they cannot reproduce. So no reproduction on its own. They do reproduce, but not on its own. So when they don't have anything, so how do they cause an infection when they enter our body? So when they cannot reproduce, so how do their number increases? So the thing is that, how do they be called as living now? As they are inert, that means it is inert, it does not react with any other organism. So if it inert, it is inert only outside a living cell, a living host. So till the time it is outside any living host, it will be inert. But when it enters a living host, it do not remain inert anymore. It becomes living. So when it get a host, any cell, it acts as a living. Okay, so although do not have any cell, but it possess a genetic material. That means it possess a genetic material which is called as RNA. And some virus also have DNA. So the RNA of a virus is single-stranded, but some of them also can have a double-stranded RNA and DNA. So they generally have RNA, but sometimes they can also have DNA. Okay. So now they cannot reproduce on its own, but they can reproduce when they live inside a host, reproduce, or they mutate. That means they change their form and they modify themselves. Mutate when they enter inside a living host. So, if the virus is left free on its own, it will not show any trails of life. And if a virus find this host cell, then it will show all the characters of living. So that's why this virus has a unique property. That's why it is not a part of a 5 kingdom classification. But now, as it shows a different life cycle, that's why we study it separately. So what are the characteristics of virus? Now, characteristics of virus. So what are the characteristics of virus? So these are acellular. That means they are neither unicellular nor multicellular, but they don't even have a cell. That's why they are called as acellular. Then they are extremely small. When we say extremely small, that means that they are so small that bacteria are very small. Now they are even smaller than the bacteria. Even smaller than bacteria. Okay. Now this word virus was given by Ivanovsky. Okay. So the virus was called as virus because this word means venom. So venom means poison. So it is a poisonous. So whenever we have a poison, so it troubles our body. So that's why when it enters our body, it harms us. So this virus is non-living when it's outside the host body, but as soon as it enters the host body, it acts like poison that it harms the body of the host. It was termed by Ivanovsky as virus. So they are inert only outside the host, but when they enter the host, they become living. Okay. and then they are parasite because they live on the other organism, but they are the obligate parasites because they are only dependent upon their host cell, because when they are outside the host cell they are non-living, so they definitely need a living host to live. So parasites that cannot complete their life cycle outside the host body, that is called as the obligate parasites. So let's discuss about the structure of virus. So they don't have any cell, but they have a genetic material. Okay, so this virus is just a nucleoprotein. So nucleoprotein means the genetic material. That means we have discussed about DNA, ribonucleic acid, deoxyribonucleic acid. So virus is just a nucleoprotein. That means they contain protein and they contain genetic material. So virus contains number one, protein, and they also contain a genetic material in the form of DNA or RNA. Okay, so in the form of RNA, or it could be DNA. So but most of the time it's just RNA, but sometimes it can be DNA as well. So after this, like DNA, RNA, all these are nucleoproteins. So virus contain the protein and genetic material. Okay, so they also have a protein code. So this code is present in order to present the genetic material. So this protein code is known as capsid. Okay, so if we see the structure of virus, which is also given in the book, so it has a protein code, like it has a protein code outside the genetic material, which is called as capsid. This is called as capsid, and inside it has a genetic material, which is RNA or a DNA. Okay, now what is this capsid made up of? It is made by the helical arrangement of identical this fluid. Okay, so this is made up of many small similar units called capsomere. Okay, so okay, now it also have a sheath and its tail fibers. This is the structure of virus. Okay, this capsid ensure protection of nucleic acid. So the main reason of this capsid is to present the nucleic acid, which is the RNA, or it could be DNA also sometimes. Okay, and this capsid contains a helical arrangement. Okay, so this is the helical arrangement, which is called as capsomere. So this is the collar, this is sheath, and these are the tail fibers. This is the structure of virus. So what happens, like when the virus is outside, like we will draw like this. So when the virus is outside, it is inert, and when it enters a cell, like it's a cell, and when it enters, like these are cell organelles, when it enters inside the cell, so here it releases its RNA inside the cell. So it releases its RNA and it will start reproducing and mutating it and will start multiplying. So if one virus will enter, and it will produce so many virus in the cell, so the cell will be gone So it will then again produce so many viruses. So this is how it reproduce. It will mutate and it will multiply its number by just releasing its own RNA. Okay, so these virus contain RNA and DNA sometimes, but it depends upon where the virus is living. If the virus is living inside the plant body, they are called as plant virus, and which live inside the animal body and enters the animal body are called as animal virus. Now, no virus can contain both DNA or RNA. So virus contain sometimes DNA or an RNA, but it could be either one of them. So there is no virus which have DNA or RNA altogether. So when it's a plant virus, so it will cause many diseases to the plants as well, like potato spindle disease. So in the plant virus, it will be single stranded DNA. Single stranded DNA. Okay, and these plant virus causes many diseases like tobacco mosaic disease. Now, tobacco mosaic virus create a mosaic like design in the leaves which will harm the plant. Okay, but the animal virus, they might have DNA or they might have RNA, but they will be having double strand of RNA or a DNA. Okay, so there is one more virus which is called as bacterial virus. Okay, so these bacterial viruses are called as bacteriophage. So what does this bacteriophage do? So bacteriophages feed on the bacteria. They feed on bacteria. Phage means which eats. Phage means to eat. So which eats the bacteria is called as the bacteriophage. So this is also a double strand of DNA. So what does the virus do? Like this example, this is a bacterial cell. So these are the virus which will act upon this bacteria and they will send their DNA, and then this DNA will combine with this, and then they will harm the DNA of bacteria. It will break the DNA of bacteria and will combine with its own DNA, and then it will again mutate and multiply its DNA in this bacteria, and then the bacteria will be finished. So there are many viral diseases such as smallpox, influenza, measles, AIDS, and in plants also there are many diseases. Just dwarfing of plant, mosaic formation in plants. These are some diseases, common diseases caused by the viral infections. So now talk about some viroids, the other organism which is called as viroids. So viroids are also a type of virus which are much smaller than virus. So viroid, the word viroid means virus-like, which looked like virus. Viroid which means virus-like. So they are even smaller than the bacteria, and they are also infectious like virus. So they are infectious, and they also contain that RNA or genetic material, infectious agents like viruses, and they are composed of RNA, but they don't have any protein code. So because they don't have any protein code of capsid, So that's why they are different from the virus. But they also harm the organisms, such as they also cause the the potato spindle tuber diseases, and it destroys the potato. So diseases it causes is potato spindle tuber disease. Okay, so these are some diseases which are caused by viroids and virus we have just studied. So now, after this, we move to the next topic of the chapter, which is the prions. Okay, so these prions are also very small microscopic organisms, and they are similar in size to virus. That means they are similar as the size of virus. They are very small, and they causes a disease which is an infectious disease, and it is a infectious neurological disease which hampers the brain actually. So this is a infectious neurological disease. That means when once it enters in the brain neurological system, so it will start on degrading the things, so it will cause infection. So it's a infectious neurological disease. The definition would be very simple, like it misfolds the protein, and the misfolding is done with the ability that it transmits to the other protein as well. That means these prions are the misfolded protein with the ability to transmit their misfold shape to the normal variant of same protein. Okay, so the agents those cause this kind of disease of the misfolding of protein were called as prions. Okay, so the disease which was caused by this was called as the bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Okay, so disease caused by prions is called as bovine spongiform encephalopathy. Okay, and which is commonly called as, this is the BSE, so which is commonly called as the mad cow disease. That means as it's a neurological disease, so it causes a mad cow disease in cattle. So the cattle will become a little insane or mad. Okay, and also sometimes it also affects humans. So its analogous variant is called as C.R. Jacob disease in the human beings. Okay, so it is a neurological disease. Okay, so such type of problems are also seen in some other diseases also, but these prions are also the infectious disease, and the agent of this disease is similar to the size of the virus. So it is another type of microbe which is different from the virus, but it is similar to the virus also. So the last topic of the chapter is lichen, and we have already studied about the lichens. So the lichens are the symbiotic association. Symbiotic means in which the two organisms are mutually benefited, or either one will be benefited. So it's a symbiotic association of mutual benefit. Okay, so this is, lichens are what? They are combinations of algae and fungi. Okay, so algae are autotrophic and fungi are heterotrophic, and in this the algae are called as phycobiont, because phycobiont, and fungi are called as mycobiont. Okay, so in this, the algae will prepare their food and they will also make the food for the fungi, and as a result the fungi provides the shelter and it also absorbs the nutrient and water for the algae. So that's why they are both mutually benefited, and they live so close in the association that if we will see them, we will not notice that it's two different organisms. We will see them as one organisms which we call as lichens. So these lichens are also indicator of the pollution, that if on a certain place we see lichens, that means that place is pollution free. And if we don't find lichens in any surroundings, that means that place has a lot of pollution, because lichens can only grow when the place is pure and pollution free. So we won't see lichens in cities, but we see lichens in the area which are full of greenery, like the place in which we live in, we can see lichens. So lichens are the symbiotic relationship in which the organisms are mutually benefited, and they are made up of algae and fungi. So with this we complete the chapter number 2. Thank you.